Good morning, and thank you for coming. I'm State Senator Judy Emmons. I represent the 33rd District in the State Senate, and really I'm your neighbor just to the east and right here in the center of Michigan, and we're just grateful that so many of you have taken time out, shown an interest in a topic that that seems to be garnering a little more attention than it has been, and that is necessary if we're really going to address the topic and the tragedy of human trafficking. I want to take time to introduce this morning my colleagues who are with me. Representative Holly Hughes, Representative Joanne Voorhees is sitting out there, Representative Rob Verheulen, Senator David Hildenbrand, and Senator Mark Jansen. And certainly a great thank you to the Diocese, the Grand Rapids Diocese, for hosting us this morning. You've been more than gracious, and we're just grateful that you're always willing to open your doors and help us out. And Sister Barbara Klein, I have to acknowledge that you are a great help for us, and we're grateful that you're willing to be involved with us, so thank you. I want to give Carl Apple a shout out too, because he helped arrange, thank you Carl, helped arrange for our successful room this morning, so thank you. Before I go any further, I do want to draw your attention to these cards, because I'll forget if I don't do it right when I see them. And as you hear about the process of the legislation that we've proposed, you may want more information, and if you do, please feel free, the cards are over there, fill them out, either drop them in the box or just mail them in. And we will put you on the list to let you know when bills are moving, when things are happening, and other information that we believe you might be interested in because you're interested in this topic. With that being said, I want to give my colleagues a chance to say a few words about the legislation that's being proposed. We have developed, through the grassroots efforts, a package of 19 bills in the Senate. And Senate Majority Leader Randy Richardville has asked me to head this up and steer this through the process. And it's somewhat daunting at times, because bills of this magnitude that are going to affect change like this are significant, not to mention that there are a number of bills. So my colleagues are all part of this process. I want to give Senator Hildenbrand a chance, if he'd be willing.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Emmons. Good morning, everybody. I'm Senator Dave Hildenbrand. I have the privilege of representing the Grand Rapids area and a few of the suburbs in the Michigan Senate. And I wanted to commend Senator Emmons and her staff for all the work she's done in this area. It's been a long process. We've been hearing a lot about it with work groups and meeting with folks and getting input as she developed this package of bills. It's, as she mentioned, a 19-bill package that was just introduced last week, and now we'll begin the process, the legislative process, which sometimes a little cumbersome and takes longer than sometimes it should, but it's a good process, and we've got the right person leading the charge to navigate the bills through the process. I originally got involved in sort of the human trafficking issue here in the Grand Rapids area. I was asked to meet with a group out at Wedgwood Christian Services who they have a safe harbor home called the Manasseh Project. And earlier this year, I met with the leadership there who talked about the need for some legislation. And so we reached out to Senator Emmons. We knew she was working on the package of bills, and they had highlighted 3 specific things that the Manasseh Project wanted that they thought would help in this area of human trafficking, especially with young women. And so I was glad to see, as we work through the process, those 3 specific areas are being highlighted in the legislation. And I just want to say I look forward to working with the team and the legislature to move these bills forward to protect our young people in this state. So thanks for having us, and maybe Senator Jansen, you want to say a few words. Thank you.
Since Dave stole my thunder, I was working with Wedgwood about 3 years ago, and we started talking about this, and the Manasseh Project was beginning to percolate back then. So I appreciate Dave taking the lead with Wedgwood, and then also Judy, because it is one of those things that as you read about it, you find out there's estimated 150 families that are affected here in Michigan. Well, these are usually young women, not always, but these are families that their life changes forever. Sometimes they don't know about it, And sometimes they do. Sometimes the child talks to their parents, talks to somebody, and it's known, but most times it is not. So it's something that I think we as a society need to kind of wake up and say, you know what, we're going to try to address this. We're going to try to say, this is terribly wrong. This is offensive. This is traumatic. This is something that we need to, as a society, say, we're going to stop it. And so it's time for all of us. So folks are watching for the first time going, what is this? Please pay attention, because it is very important that we as a society wake up and say, this is wrong, and we're going to stop it. And so I think that's what the intent of all of this really is, but it's going to take all of us as Michiganders to step up and say, if we see something, if we understand what it is, now we can begin to try to stop it. So I want to thank the good senator, and we just thankful that it's at the diocese. We ask God's blessing on this as we move ahead, because we have to catch a lot of bad people. So.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Rob Verheulen. I'm the state representative from the 74th District, which is Granville, Walker, Rockford, Cedar Springs, Western and Northern Kent County. And I'm here simply to throw my support behind what Senator Emmons and the others are doing. As a father of 4 daughters, grandfather of 5 granddaughters, I think of the victims, and every one of them is either a sister, a daughter, perhaps a mother of all of us, our society. And so I think this is such a very important thing, and I'm just so proud of what Senator Emmons and others are doing, and so very supportive, and I encourage all of you to get behind the effort for those particularly the young women. Thank you.
Well, as a former state representative in Muskegon County, we're very conscious of what's happening with human trafficking. And I want to thank Senator Emmons and her Chief of Staff, Laura Toy, for including me in the committee fighting this tragedy. You'll soon hear some stories from Annie, I believe, and you really need to take notice of what's happening. This is something that you think happens in other countries, but it's happening right under our noses, and we need to pay attention. I commend Senator Emmons, Senator Jansen, and Senator Hildenbrand and others who are working on this. I'm glad you're here, Representative Verheulen, to try to make a difference in the world around us. It's very important. So thank you again for being here and helping us with this issue.
Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge the committee that we've been working with, and we have been working at a grassroots level. We've had an advisory committee working on the legislation, helping us develop the needs, and certainly eyes and ears across the entire state. That's important. Sister Barbara Klein has served on that. Rebecca and Annie also wearing the most eye-catching shirts you'll see around town today. And it certainly would, if we all wore them around town, I'm sure we'd get some looks and perhaps even some comments and some questions, because that's what it's all about, raising the awareness. We have to raise the awareness to address the problem. Let me just give you an instance. My colleagues were talking about, could be your child, could be your sister, your brother, could be your daughter. There was a situation where a truck driver noticed something that was not quite what he thought it should be. And just because his gut told him that this just doesn't seem right, he called it in. It was investigated, and it was at a truck stop, and he essentially broke up a 12-state trafficking ring just because he was aware and he paid attention, and he went further than that. He made the call and got involved, and that's what it's going to take. First, we have to make people aware of how diabolical and how pervasive this is in the state. And then the next step is to move beyond that and get involved. And the folks that we've been working with, we're grateful that they've been involved. And then for us as legislators, putting legislation in place that has teeth, that shows that this state is taking this very seriously, that traffickers should think twice before they come to Michigan, because we want to have the strongest laws, the strongest penalties. We want people to understand that Michigan is serious, we mean business, and this is no place to even think about something like this. Toledo is one of the hubs in the country. People move in and out of Toledo consistently, constantly. Its close proximity to our state makes us vulnerable, not to mention the international borders that we have here in Michigan. So I'm going to stop on some of that. I'll get into the legislation in a little bit. Before I do that, though, I want to wind up really and give you an overview of the legislation. I would like Annie Donowald to come up here. Annie is a good friend. She's been working on our committee, and we're just grateful that she's willing to be here this morning, and I think you will be too. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator and Laura, for having me. I run an organization called Eve's Angels that is right here in Grand Rapids. We're in Lansing and also Detroit and some other states in the country. So for me and my teams, we have 100 volunteers right now. We are, like you said, the term grassroots. We're grassrooting out into places where sex is being sold. We set up support groups. And I have a very clear view of how prominent the sex trafficking situation is in the country. The problem is that when I come to speak, or when we're coming to educate people and saying that this is a serious need, what we're finding is that the epidemic isn't just the sex trafficking, but it's also the ignorance of what it looks like. I believe that the lie that I come in contact with, and Senator and I have had discussions about this, is that the lie is that it looks a certain way. It looks as if a girl is walking down the street, she gets hit over the head, she gets pulled into a van, and she's never to be heard from again. And unfortunately, that too is sex trafficking. But sex trafficking is also, it has many, many faces that we're finding. It can be a girl that has a boyfriend, a 13-year-old girl that thinks it's her boyfriend, but it's really not her boyfriend. And that's where we have to get more in depth in educating ourselves. And it's not just a problem for us standing up here, but it's a community problem. It's all of our problems to come together and just build a no tolerance in the state of Michigan that says that we're not going to tolerate people, little boys, little girls, and women being sold for sex. This isn't going to be tolerated as a social norm, and the only way that we can really do that is to educate ourselves and to really get into the depths of what sex trafficking looks like. Again, I'm working with women right now that think that that's their boyfriend. They think that he offers her this and that. And a lot of times people say, well, these girls want to be out there. They want to be out there selling sex, but you don't understand the backstory. You don't understand the grooming process that took her, where her mother or her father or an uncle might have been selling her as a child. And I know this is a little rough, but this is the subject matter in which we're all sitting here today. They might have been sold by a family member, and so this is all they know. This is their norm. And a lot of times people go to what's normal until we as a society step in and say, no, honey, that's not normal. Let me help you come in and mainstream back into society, where we set up programs and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm doing here, and if you have any questions.
Well, as Annie said, this takes on many faces. Let me give you an example in a suburb in another part of the state where a family person had a family, had a home, had a job, was a coach at some league of some kind where youth were involved, and then a few blocks over or a few streets over, he also had ensconced within a residence, a home, or an apartment, some women that he was selling on the side. That's the kind of face that we don't anticipate seeing in an issue like this, but it occurs, and it occurs right here in Michigan, and that's the kind of thing we're starting to address with our legislation. Let me give you a rundown on the bills. Now keep in mind, this is an industry that's $32 billion worth money worldwide, $32 billion. It is tied with the drug trade, arms race, and that's what we're dealing with when it's such a lucrative prospect that folks will do anything to make sure that they keep this money flow coming. We do have handouts for you These include the list of the bills. They do not have the numbers on them, but the numbers are on the website now. When we printed it, the numbers hadn't been assigned. But I'm going to give you an overview of them and take one of these and it'll go in a little bit more in depth, but not a great deal. We're looking at affirmative defense. And this would allow a victim of trafficking to introduce evidence that caused them to be a criminal, but they can use their trafficking as a defense, because if you were coerced into committing a crime, you should have some way to defend yourself after the fact. It would be also advantageous to implement adult entertainment business customer fees. We would allow municipalities to select their own ordinances for adult entertainers. It would create a human trafficking board. We would also eliminate the statute of limitations on human trafficking crimes. Currently, many folks who've been trafficked don't even realize what it was that they were involved with until years after the fact. And this is a way to come back and address the perpetrators of that. Prohibit the use of the internet to solicit a minor. Additions in the legislation that would terminate the rights of parents, parental rights of parents, if they traffic their own child. Racketeering will be addressed. It would require Johns to register on the Sexual Offender Registry. Safe harbor legislation, and that includes probate court jurisdictions, Department of Human Services referrals. Also, criminal convictions could be cleared, allow the victims to sue their captors, medical and psychological treatment for victims, and it would also monitor the victim status for foster care minors who are human trafficking victims. Training for medical professions, and there are also 2 bills that include wiretapping. These cover the gamut, and we know that we're really just starting the process. When you talk about medical protocol, when somebody presents at an emergency room, there's training for them. It will go beyond that. We will need training for any first responder, firemen, police, anyone who has access to a home. When they're called, they need to know what they're looking at when they arrive in that home. If they see something that doesn't seem right, they need to be trained to know what to identify and to identify it as a clue as to human trafficking. So that is a fast and quick overview. The process is starting. We'll be having hearings. It will work its way through the Senate and then move over to the House. And hopefully we can see some progress by the end of the year. I'm very optimistic that this is an issue that I think all of our colleagues are interested in. They're committed to making a difference, and I'm just grateful that so many of them could be here today.